Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we continue our series on Edgar Allan Poe movies with the 1964 film, The Tomb of Ligeia. This is episode 304. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the current release, The Bookman, which just came out June 2nd. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Drew Edwards, the writer and creator of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is the winner of 2018 Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle and a member of the PEN American Fellowship. Mr. Drew Edwards, say hello.
New intro. Fancy.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Just when I think you can't get any more enthusiastic, Jason, you'd like top your last intro.
Hello. Okay. Tomb of Ligeia is a 1964 British horror film directed by Roger Corman. This is the last of the the Corman AI Poe series. Stars Vincent Price and Elizabeth Sheppard. Tells of a man haunted by the spirit of his dead wife and her effect on his second marriage, which is such a wonderful, that's the Wikipedia description, and it makes it sound like a domestic drama, you know. His dead wife and her effect on his second marriage. The screenplay by Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown, was based on the short story Ligea by Edgar Allan Poe. It is the last of these of the Poe pictures. It was filmed at Castle Acre Priory and other locations with a mostly English cast. So let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, we're wrapping up Poe with Ligea. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I really think that this is, a wonderful movie to end with because it has a lot of the same themes as the previous two. And it's also the most different looking of the bunch. It has some of the same look, but with the previous two, we did talk about how there's kind of a similarity between the style of these movies and the style of Hammer. This one really looks like a Hammer movie. Like it's I think, Jason, you may correct me on this, but I think it's shot in some of the same places because parts of this were shot in England, and just gives it that full-on kind of Hammer vibe on a lot of scenes. I also think Vincent Price's outfit is really cool and highly ripped off. Like the whole time I was watching this, I don't know why it never occurred to me, but Gary Oldman's costuming in Bram Stoker's Dracula is basically verbatim ripped off of Vincent Price's costume, and this right down to the sunglasses. And
wow, I had not thought of that. Yeah.
I have to believe that is intentional. This has got some of the coolest, there's a lot of like monologuing by Vincent Price in this. So if you're wanting to hear Vincent Price just talk in that awesome Vincent Price voice, this movie really delivers on that. Fun movie. Glad I watched it. Good times.
Lovely. Julia, I don't know if you had ever seen this one before. We actually got one of our daughters to watch it with us. What were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the whole thing is actually filmed in the UK, and it was they shot it on a 25-day schedule as opposed to the 15-day schedule that they had used in the US for the other movies. And Roger Corman attributed that to the fact that the British crew was obsessed with taking tea breaks, which makes me laugh. I thought it was beautiful to look at. I love that Priory place. The set is gorgeous. I really want to go there. It's so pretty. I thought it looked neat. I like the colors. I thought it was amazing, the transformation between Ligea and Rowena. It's because it's the same actress playing both parts, and she looks completely different. She acts completely different. So that was really cool. So the performances were great. I had, some issues with just some of the ways that, some of the relationship stuff, but we'll talk about that. And it's the same stuff that pops up in a lot of things from the 60s and, even even now, but less now, as far as how the men and women interact with each other. But I thought it was very interesting and really neat to look at.
Fantastic. Tony.
Yeah, I like the movie. I think it's interesting to see Vincent Price actually, the way they've done his hair coloring and stuff, almost kind of making him look younger.
Mm-hmm.
The color thing that Drew keyed off of, what I found fascinating this time around was, instead of everything being lush, like we've talked about previously, it's a very, especially in the interior scenes, it's a very muted palette with all of the things that are important kind of blazingly bright.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be brightly colored candles or various bits throughout the set. So instead of everything having this Technicolor feel, they've decided to accent everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything pushed back into the background is very muted. And even a lot of the costuming is muted. I thought that was really interesting, except when they need to pull somebody out, like certain key characters. And I thought that was an interesting choice, considering up until this point, we've had all just everything feels really sumptuous. But I think part of that is also because of how bleak the themes are and his relationships and everybody's kind of relationships, other than he and his new bride. They bring color into that. And those deliberate choices were really interesting and something I picked up on. I enjoyed the movie. I don't know if I enjoy it as much as maybe it sounds like Drew did, but I think it's really cool, and it's an awesome way to wrap it all up.
This is one of those AI Poe movies that I had not seen until I was well into adulthood. In fact, I think I was out of all school. I was off in Austin when I finally got around to seeing this. It's one of those ones that everybody always spoke of as being really beautiful, and fine, and yet, somehow I had seen everything else. I'd never seen it. And you're right. It's the American International Poe that doesn't look like an AI Poe. It does indeed look like a Hammer picture. It's shot at Shepperton, which sometimes they shot some of the Hammer stuff at, but it's all a new set anyway. But you're right, Drew. It just, by virtue of especially the outdoor stuff, which often looks like when they'd go outdoors in Hammer. Good grief, just amazing. And also,
when they would do outdoor stuff in like a lot of the other ones, it's like false outdoors,
right?
Whereas this is like real outdoors.
It's a real outdoors. It's this real priory, which now I want to go to. I mean, I don't think I had ever really been aware in the past just how gorgeous this ruin is, and I want now I want to see it and just go, this is where they had what I presume is a prop, the tomb of Ligea itself that sits there with the rose, with the flowers and everything. I assume that that's just a big wooden construction, but the rest of it, beautiful, just gorgeous. Two things, and why don't we go ahead and start with just the characters, because I think that's a good place to start, because this film does not have a great deal of plot, and really it is the story of characters. We'll get to Elizabeth Sheppard in a second, because I honestly, truly, no joke, when I watched this movie, I did not know that it was that it was one woman playing both those parts. You'd think that I would have, but I did not recognize her. But first, Vincent Price plays Verdun Fell, which is a great name. The name's not in the story Ligea. It's this name that Robert Towne has given the character. And it's funny to think that this is 1960, what do we say, 64, the end of 64, meaning they probably were filming this in 64. We just watched House of Usher from 1960. 4 years have passed, and Vincent Price appears a very different person. I mean, I admit, in House of Usher, he had his hair dyed blonde, but he appears taller. He appears to have gained about 40 pounds. His face is jowlier and craggier. Just overall, he's a much bigger and more imposing character than Usher was. Now Tony was talking about, when we watched Usher, just how hilarious it was that Usher is kind of dissolute and always like pretending that he's about to sort of fall over and break. So part of it is just the fact that Price is a better actor than we give him credit for. Because these are very different. They're just very different men, and it was wild to see Price playing what amounts to the romantic lead in a
although
picture.
he does share abnormalities with Usher. While Usher had his whole like I can't abide sound or touch or
Right.
food that isn't basically mush. This guy has a thing where his vision is so acute that light hurts him, which makes him almost seem, that Dracula comparison I was talking about.
Yes.
It does make him very much seem like a vampire.
But it's clearly
Yes.
not a physical ailment because it goes away when he's happily away with. It just has to do with being in the house near Ligea, because it goes away. He doesn't have the sunglasses when he gets married. He's very happily like seeing just fine in the outdoors.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I was really the whole thing. If you imagine that you've been watching these Poe films every 6 months or so, and so you come back for this one, which is the last of all of them, and you go to the drive-in and you're going to watch Tomb of Ligeia. There's so many things that are really surprising about it that first of all, by the way, I'm amazed that these were essentially drive-in movies. The idea that you're going to entertain a bunch of teenagers and you're working a lot harder than you need to, because you're making these amazing like costume period horror films based on classic literature, and you're kind of putting your all into these sets. I'm just amazed at the treasure that we have in these Corman movies, these Corman Poes, that he bothered to do this. It was like he decided to leave a legacy, but the surprising thing is you sit in, you're like, it's Vincent Price, it's Poe. What's it going to be like? And you open up with Price being kind of the Price that we know, as he's frightening and they're burying somebody. This is another Hammer thing, because it has an opening that's very, very similar to Kiss of the Vampire. And then when we follow Price later and he meets Rowena, there's a flash forward that is truly delightful and surprising, because all of a sudden he starts wearing brighter colors and they're like frolicking in the fields. And it's so counter to like everything you would expect from Vincent Price. I don't know. I really liked the places that this script went in the first half. Where should we go? Rowena, go ahead.
Well, I want to know, Julia brought up, the fact that his ailment seems to change when he's not in the house. When we were talking about Usher, I know you and I were on the same page that both of us agreed that there was nothing supernatural going on. I wanted to know where, because there's this whole business with the demon cat and then the crazy dreams and everything. I want to know if anybody else. I think in this one there is something supernatural going on.
Oh, for sure.
I want to know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think with him, like I said, the eye thing is more either an affect about either something to do with the house or something to do with what the effect she has on him. But for sure, that cat is like, basically, I believe that Rowena's spirit just hops around. Like, I think it's like Fallen with the devil. It's like, I think that her spirit is in the cat and just kind of jumping around, terrorizing everybody. And then, of course, jumps into to Rowena there when she's doing, when she's hypnotized,
Mm-hmm.
and then she goes into the body that he has been keeping, which creepily spoiler,
Sure.
in that room.
So it's all
yeah.
right.
So I believe that's what's happening. That's my theory.
When Rowena brushes her hair and then she hears the sound of brushing and she goes back to look at her brush, she finds Ligea's hair on it. That's a supernatural thing. Well, I mean, it sure seems to be a supernatural thing that has no explanation, other than that there's something. Actually, you know what? There's lots of supernatural stuff that happens, actually, when you come down
Obviously, as Sophia pointed out, the fact that what did she say, that Ligea dies 3 times and Rowena dies twice, or vice versa? Obviously, all the being thrown into fire and then suddenly being fine stuff is super weird.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. This is a very supernatural story. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Elizabeth Sheppard, who plays Rowena and Ligea. So Ligea, Drew, do you want to explain? Ligea's dead. I mean, she's not really
Like
in
Gia
most
is
of it.
dead in the first frame
Right.
of
So
the movie.
So what is the deal with Ligea? Like, what was she all about? Why is she dominating everybody from the grave?
We only really know kind of. They do a lot to build up a mystique around this Ligea character. The way everybody talks about her, like they keep saying that she's willful and that she almost cast a spell on everybody that was around her. And apparently she had this interest in hypnotism and things of that nature. So they never go out and like say anything as overt as like, oh, she was a witch or she was this or she was that. That's never stated. Just sort of danced around. And I think that's part of why this movie is good fodder to pick apart, because they don't really do a lot of saying, in a lesser movie they would just spell all that stuff out for you instead of like you trying to have to kind of connect the dots yourself. And the way that the Rowena character is kind of our in to this world, like while she's trying to do all the sort of detective work stuff, we're having to kind of work it out for ourselves. So you never really fully get to know what the deal was with Ligea, just that Vincent Price was very obsessed with her. And but they also had this kind of combative relationship, because like when he sees Rowena for a moment and he thinks she's her, the first thing he tries to do is kill her.
That's
so
true.
There's obviously something off there.
Yes.
And he wants to destroy the cat, which may or may not be her as well.
Well, he talks a lot about, he goes over and over and over, both poetically and just forcefully. Oh, she has these plans. She has, I can't remember exactly how he puts it, but he reiterates it throughout the movie that she's going to come back and domineer everything.
Yeah.
He doesn't know. He's of the opinion that she lives forever. She's basically a vampire, some malevolent demon who has had multiple husbands and lovers and everything, and that she is just a terrible, evil force of nature that's lived, as far as he can tell, eternity.
Right.
And he keeps talking about this over and over and over. And at first, you're like, well, maybe that's just not really true. But later on, you discover, hey, there's all this supernatural stuff that if she can body hop, then that could be true.
He says that she seemed to, after a while, her spirit was in the house itself. Like, in other words, she's going to find different ways to escape death. And and you're right. And then find her way into, she seems to, for a while, inhabit the cat, because this cat, and if not, the cat's just a sort of familiar of the spirit of Ligea, because once he brings a new wife into the house, the cat, the cat sort of attacks her. It's a running gag almost that the cat is constantly trying to attack Rowena, which I think is hilarious. He tells.
Well, it's hilarious because you'll see this cat. First of all, oh my God! First of all, the cat will just be lying there, and you'll hear. I'm like, there's no way that cat is doing that. And second, when a cat is attacking, it is clearly a stuffed cat, especially when like Vincent Price is fighting with the cat. It's just it's like the rabbit in in the
Monty Python.
Monty Python, the Holy Grail. It's like clearly you're just grabbing this stuffed cat.
Although because I'm me, the cat violence stuff still was like,
oh sure, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand. And one of the interesting things in the first half, as I mentioned, Ligea is dead. We meet creepy, scary Vincent Price. We flash forward and we meet the willful and sunny Rowena. And when she, sort of breaks away from the fox hunt that she's on, she meets Vincent Price and she is just love struck by him. And Robert Towne originally wanted Richard. I'm sorry, the guy from the Thornbirds. I apologize. But he wanted a much more romantic, younger actor, and it's written that way, that she is just instantly in love with this guy, and he is so like brooding and Rochestery that and the more he kind of snarls and expresses his dismay that she's hanging out, the more interested in him she becomes, and so
She's just got a thing for goth dudes, man.
I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, the name you're thinking of is Richard Chamberlain, by the way.
Richard Chamberlain.
I was like, is it Richard Chamberlain? And I googled him. Yes, it is. Okay.
Yes.
Well, also, it's a sign of her intelligence and just how she approaches, because she basically goes, look, man, I've been around. None of this, all this affectations, like, she plays it really coy and really smooth throughout it. It's not a love struck, he's the dreamiest. Because she's willing to go to the house, but the way she approaches it, I don't know. I didn't see it as the same kind of love struck that you mentioned. I saw it as, hey, I want to know more about this guy. She's really smart and cagey about it.
Okay.
And
Price
is really,
more
really,
interesting.
yeah. And she's really, at first she even kind of keeps it at a distance, but because he's so different than the rest of the rich cats that she's around.
Yes.
It's fascinating. I really like their relationship in the beginning because because of her approach. Yeah. And, she doesn't just fall for him. That's what, it's kind of funny that you kind of saw it that way.
But there is dialogue that way, because she says, she's very open. She goes, you're somebody that I'm drawn to. I'm not, I don't object to any of this.
She doesn't play it. Tony is right. She doesn't play it like a swooning teenage ingenue. Like, she plays it from a much more worldly place.
I think it's more like the vampire thing, where she's drawn to him despite. This is what I was saying about how I'm troubled by it, but it's not necessarily completely unrealistic, because obviously many people are drawn to people who are abusive toward them. But the fact that he is so first kind of cold toward her, and then literally like strangles her basically, and then she's like, I'm drawn to you. That is so troubling. And yet, like I say, there's plenty of people who are like, oh, this guy's dangerous. I'm gonna come out, like be into him. So that's what I was saying when I was saying that I don't know. It's just
I'm with you.
Especially, you're not wrong about it being troubling, but Tony's also not wrong about the fact that Price is way more interesting than these guys. Like he can talk about archaeology, he can talk about art, he's a sculptor. It's not just the way he is attired that's different. Like, everything around him is different, and again, she plays it from a perspective, for whatever the reason, you could have gotten somebody that would have played it like, I don't know, like a swooning,
Well, imagine if this had been Richard Chamberlain. Then think about that. If this had been Richard Chamberlain, Born Identity and all that stuff, and Dr. Kildare, and you had somebody across from him, maybe this woman, maybe somebody a little bit younger, because now you'd be casting younger. That would be very different, I think. I mean, it would be super weird to,
Her approach is almost like. Good.
Well, I was going to say, if it was Richard Chamberlain, there's a good chance I probably wouldn't have watched this.
Right.
Certainly not the Vincent Price retrospective.
Right.
Sorry, Tony, what were you going to say?
I think her approach is a lot like how I imagine the archetype of, like, when you watch Daria, she's really acerbic, and anybody who does kind of have her interests, she's willing to kind of give them a little bit of guff, but that's part of seeing, hey, are you really cool?
Yeah.
Because he's willing to, when they go, hey, I've never seen a fox like this. How could it be? And he goes, yeah, that's my dead wife's fox. Thanks, ass. But he doesn't call him out in the same way as, well, that's the last thing I had.
Yeah.
He just leaves it. He leaves out the thanks for killing it, jerk.
He also
he's
doesn't.
not that bothered, because he'll hold on to it anyway, even if it's
well,
dead.
Well, that's a good point. But it's a good point, because Rowena knows so much about him already, and he doesn't bother, because he's too cool. He doesn't bother to correct anything, because it's just not worth his time. And I think she finds that fascinating. that he's not going to bother to go, oh, no, I'm not the doctor. I own this place or whatever. I also really like the script. It's just very, very interesting when you compare this to Richard Matheson's Usher script. It's very interesting how they're setting very modern like stings. So for instance, he indicates that he can sculpt in wax. So that later when a wax sculpture shows up, we've seen that before. We don't need any, and the other thing is how it's broken up into these sequences. So there's the opening sequence with the scary Vincent Price. Then there's the frolicking in the fields, which is very like the opening scenes of Rebecca when they're vacationing together. And then just like in Rebecca, then there's a hard cut and now we're back in the castle and suddenly he's back to being a freakazoid again. And it took me a while to figure out why does his personality change so abruptly after their honeymoon, because he seems to have a really good time and to be like a really fresh
because it's just the house. They go back to the house and suddenly he's
back under Ligea's spell.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's not sleeping. We find out that he's sneaking out in the middle of the night, and ultimately we find out it's to visit it's to visit his preserved dead wife, who's in a weird, I don't know, a weird Egyptian reincarnation chamber downstairs.
This is Dr. Fibe's room.
Right. And she's in a 4-poster bed with her arms kind of stuck up. It's just, which is grody, by the way.
She looks beautiful.
No. Whatever they've done, to the dead Ligea, it makes her look as ravishing as one's dead spouse can look. But it's gross, man. I mean, because there's a sexual aspect to this as well. We have to assume that these are conjugal visits, and
I had not assumed that at all.
Yeah,
That's
I wasn't going there, but
I did not assume that at all.
You don't
not.
think that a famous story about necrophilia involves necrophilia?
Is it about necrophilia?
I mean, I've always understood this story to be rife with an undercurrent of necrophilia. Maybe that's as good as we'll get.
Okay,
I mean, he's in love with a corpse.
Yes.
Yeah, but the question is he actually have sex with it? I don't know the answer to that.
We are not given an answer to that. So that's that. So we truly are not. It's true.
Well, they missed out.
So better as subset.
They missed out bringing our friend Alice Cooper back with Cold Ethel as a theme song. Missed opportunities. Now, what's interesting though is there's a certain aspect to his performance and how he plays the character that part of the time he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
And other times he's under the spell, not necessarily of her, but he has, he tries to kill his future fiance first, but that's partially because he doesn't even see her as her.
Yeah.
Which it's not a spell of, hey, come be seduced by me because I'm always your wife. It's a separate weird thing where his whole perception is being changed by her supernatural presence. And that's interesting because of that, it also could read that he's doing all of that just in his separated personality in a way, which, they don't go into as much, but I kind of saw it that way as well. There's certain things that he does throughout his day that are because of the malevolent presence of his demon body hopping wife.
Yeah. You're right. There are several aspects of Price. There's the Price that respects his dead wife's memory, but is willing to marry again if he's fallen in love with somebody. There's but wants to preserve that memory and is willing to put his new wife in a prior place. And then there's the zombie Vincent Price who's walking around at night, who's going to visit her because he's under the spell. And sometimes he's just confused. And there's one point, by the way, when he reads, I am assuming that he reads at length from the narration of the story while she's climbing up the stairs.
Yeah. What a strange scene.
So amazing. Well, first of all, to have him just read so that we're blessed.
Well, and
to
it's such
have
a
Vincent
weird.
Price leading
Yes,
Poe,
that was
you know.
beautiful, really beautiful. But it's such a weird scene because she is following the cat who has picked up off the floor some glasses very similar to the ones that he's
The cat
actually
steals
wearing.
the sunglasses. I
Well,
love
the
it.
cat steals the sunglasses, but they're a second pair because he's actually wearing one of those pairs right while he's talking. So
That
the
is
cat
great.
steals the sunglasses, goes up the stairs, so she's following, and it's up to the clock tower. And I don't know why she decides she has to keep following the cat once it becomes clear that it's very dangerous to do so, because they're up now in the I said clock tower, I meant bell tower. The cat has now gone around the very loud bell, and so she's going to follow the cat. I'm like, just let the cat come down. It's going to come down at some point.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
it doesn't, then you can, go back and look for the glasses later. But you don't have to follow the damn cat right now. But then, again, with the supernatural thing, for some reason, the cat or whoever, the spirit of Ligea, is able to sound the bell while she's sitting there. And then she completely loses it. She's like, she can't deal. She can't get away. She's just like shuddering in the corner.
But that's the moment.
Scary and loud it is.
But when he comes to find her, that is the moment that cements their relationship, where they decide they're truly in love and they're going to get married. And so if, depending on how much of a Batman plot this is, either it's frustrating to the spirit of Ligea that her effort to drive this woman crazy is what actually drove her more into the arms of Vincent Price, or if she's just trying to end up getting a new body, maybe it all works out. But I don't think she's that.
If
I don't think she's.
If
go
you
ahead.
go off the seance, it seems like she's trying to get herself a new meat suit.
Right.
Yeah.
And oh God, that's a really good scene. Tony, do you want to explain the seance scene? Because
I don't know, but I think we're missing a hopeful cut where we get Bill Murray to do the Garfield voice for the cat throughout the. That would be a totally amazing extra fan cut. Yeah, well, he decides, they're like, hey, well, if you can hypnotize, why don't you do some of that?
Right. They're at a dinner party and they say, yeah, hypnotism. That's a rocking thing. Let's
hypnotism.
Yeah, so he starts to do that, and then I don't know, man. He goes into some weird stuff where at first he goes, hey, why don't you revert back to being a kid?
Yes.
Creepy. Like
he's hypnotizing his wife, Rowena, just as a sample. Yes.
To show, and everybody around also looks around like, yeah, she's starting to sing that childhood theme, but she's still your wife, man. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then it goes super south because his dead wife says, oh, well, now that she's suppressed under hypnosis, I can take over for a little bit, and starts to speak through her, which again is pretty awesome because it gives the actress who plays both parts the ability to act and be somebody different and be the character that she plays off and on, which is really cool. But yeah, it's all kinds of weird and all kinds of creepy, which also kind of cements the supernatural part. But it starts off just all the things he's asking her and telling her. It's some weird crap to do to your wife to begin with, and then it turns real super. Even you can tell he's like, oh, I did not expect this.
Yeah, this is disturbing.
This is a bad scene.
There is meanwhile, this other stuff that's just sort of that I found fascinating is this is all this supernatural story, right? And all this stuff is going on, but the other story that's going on is one that you can just recognize, where somebody's made what looks like it might have been an ill-advised marriage, because Rowena appears to be not very happy when all of her friends come to visit for dinner.
Also, the fact that it turns out she's not actually really married because he's still married.
Right. That happens soon enough too. Yeah,
he's still married to Ligea, who somehow never managed to get a death certificate.
Well, and they sleep in separate beds, which is super weird. I mean, I know this is the 60s, but
Well, I can't help but wonder if that doesn't happen because they find out. I don't know. I guess she was doing that. They were doing that before.
I think that happened a lot during that time as well.
Sure.
I don't think that's not something that in that period of time. That's not unheard of.
Hollywood would not have required them to sleep in separate beds. They just sleep in separate beds because that's just how they do. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's pretty common to see the Lord and Lady have separate chambers. I don't know how they're supposed to arrange to have sex. I have no idea how that works if you have different bedrooms.
Well, no, they visit each other.
Yeah.
They just visit each other.
Just
Yeah,
whatever you do to when the cat's not watching.
Right.
oh, you never know when the cat's watching.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, come
But
on.
yeah,
Cat.
the so they do. They have the separate rooms. So she's upset. She feels like their marriage is kind of a sham so far. Now the script, by the way, is like telescoped. So it's really only a day.
But,
I mean, but whatever. It's.
But it's also as soon as they are married, they talk a lot. They go into a lot about, hey, isn't it cool by the seaside? So they've had a time period where things are going pretty cool.
Yes. The frolicking in the fields section that I was telling you.
Yeah, started, and that's kind of our frustration. Hey, I think if we could just get away and stay away, from your dead wife, like I think we have something going on, and we did have. And now that everything's kind of gone back to status quo, but I mean, I think that can happen a lot. You're married a long time. It just happens in a tiny compressed period. They've lived the life of several decades of marriage within a short period of time.
Yes, in what appears to be a couple of weeks. Yeah,
right. Because that can happen with your job and everything like that. And now, I mean, it's just compressed. Like all the stuff that happens where you go, man, we had so much fun on vacation, and now, crap, I have to worry about the car insurance and the cat possession and the hypnosis and the dinner parties and cleaning up the metric ton of cobwebs that you just let go in the house. Even though we're married now, you just still I'm the one who has to clean those up. So yeah, I mean, I could see how she's kind of disaffected once again, especially when she's man, it's like, I get it, because but he's also, what's weird is he's defensive about not getting the divorce finalized. Yeah. But also, because of the way things are, he's scared of getting it. It's like, divorce. Ligea would never let me do that, man.
Yeah, actually, it's not even a divorce; it's a death certificate. Yeah.
You can't kill her. Everybody's kind of incredulous. Like, look, I wanted to get the divorce, but I can't get the certificate because she's not dead. She's never dead. She's an undead demon for hundreds of years or whatever. Eternity.
Because she willed it. She willed it. What? So.
And so it's exactly as Kenrick, the manservant, explains. Vincent Price is not capable of his character is not capable of explaining the stuff that doesn't make sense. When he reaches a point of I don't know what we might call, what is it? A pushback, something that doesn't make sense. He'll just shut down. So if it's, well, how come you can't get the death certificate? All this stuff just makes him irritable. But if you push him far enough and you just, cognitive dissonance, there you go. Push him far enough, he'll just simply just go to sleep. He'll just go into a trance. It's just like the robots in Westworld or any other thing where everything that you're about requires you just not to be able to grapple with a particular important truth. And it's interesting, this is by the guy who wrote Chinatown, because that's very much the same. There's all these deep, dark truths underneath how people are behaving, and they need to be snapped out of it. And we finally find out that that's exactly what's happened. He is under a spell, and it is a spell that was cast just as Ligea was dying, which is a thing very like the case of M. Valdemar. And Julia, can you describe what exactly the spell was that was cast by the at least humanly, physically dying Ligea?
No, I don't remember. What is she? I know she said
she basically said, "I'm not going to die."
Oh yeah. I know why he's saying that, because I said that I was going to do the same thing when I was on my deathbed. She said, "I am your only wife, like forever and always," or whatever. Right. Like, ooh, I want to say that. I can't remember exactly how she put it, but it was the idea that she'll never be dead, and also he'll never have another wife.
Right, and. And then she died, and so he's stuck with it. Yeah,
mean, we have Rain has told me there's certain instances where if I do X, Y, and Z, she'll haunt me. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna haunt my family regardless. Go. Yep, for sure.
The biggest thing that they don't ever spell out is, and I will send a cat to steal your shades. And he won't even go to the beach or surf when they're on. He's gonna. Go around the house with them.
Hey, do you think at the seaside, do you think that Verdun Fell wore one of those like stripy long john swimming suits. Like
I don't
in
see how he didn't. I mean, if it's good enough for the demon barber of
Fleet Street, yes.
Fleet Street, then why not, right?
Oh man,
But yeah,
so
can't
delightful.
steal your sunglasses. You won't
You
even
could kind
surf.
I bet the cat would follow them on their honeymoon. So they go
to the beach, wearing
to
the
the beach.
shades. That'd be amazing.
They stop and buy some, candy floss, and as they walk with their cane hand in hand on the beach and tripping through the water and wading, and the stupid cat is like chasing after them and occasionally popping whatever balloon they buy. And
Meanwhile, everybody's like, "Who wears a top hat to the beach?"
I want to
I
see
do.
the beach vacation of Verdenfell. That's a wonderful. That's a wonderful
That'd be
vision.
great. Why are there already cobwebs here on the beach? What?
He carries his own fog bank. It just moves behind him. So anyway, they discover
all of this, like the stuff, the hypnotism stuff,
yeah,
does make him as terrible as he kind of is. It does make him kind of pitiable too.
Mhm.
Because like we don't know what he was like when he was not under Ligea's spell. He might have been an okay guy prior to that.
Well, everything that we see when he's kind of not under that spell he's really interesting. I mean, that's why, she falls in love with him is everything you said before. He's a sculptor. He's very learned, and he is this kind of mixture of, he's his own kind of weird way of bad boy. He's very sensitive in a lot of ways that make him interesting when he's sensitive, and also very learned. And hey, I know all this. I have all this knowledge, and here's some cool, interesting facts that makes him interesting.
Yeah.
Conversationalist. And the time he's outside of her grasp, he is. Everybody who meets him kind of does have this. There's some dialogue here and there where they go, yeah, remember he used to be really cool. We knew him. And everybody kind of agrees, wow, man, something happened, really did a number on that guy.
Yeah.
Throughout. And so even though, there's jealousy that, man, how could she like this guy? He still has a thing for his wife. There's also a dichotomy of, well, I guess he's happier than before because they knew him, way back when. There's a certain amount of complexity to it that there didn't have to be.
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Towne has really gone out of his way to make a kind of a complex script, including this double role, which is again, there's all this stuff that's better than a film, has to be. When you think about like stuff that's coming out at the time, like Horror Party Beach, which is truly just as dumb as a bag of hammers, and this is actually a pretty literate script.
This is where I would think that maybe Jason's been abducted by an alien or taken over by a pod person, because he always says dumb as a box of rocks. And I'm like, bag of hammers? Wait, what? Is this the pod person? Jason?
I want to establish that this is indeed dumber than a box of rocks.
A bag of hammers is dumber than a box of rocks. Okay, pod person, Jason.
So there's a really suspenseful moment when everything is coming to a head. The sort of the beginning of the climax, when Rowena is finally figuring out the mystery. Everything is going to come to an end. The manservant has said, "You need to find your way through the tomb," and Rowena has found her way in the other direction, and they wind up in the Great Egyptian Room, and everything gets explained. I know that this is where we are the most like in a stage play or something, where Kendrick now explains everything in a monologue, where like at the end of Psycho, where he just comes out and explains everything. I love this because it's just kind of cool. It's a thing that happens in old movies, and frankly, I miss it. Where a character just takes a moment to go ahead and sum up, why Vincent Price has been doing everything like this. Great. And then the monster mash begins, where I actually can't remember the order that all of this goes in, but essentially Rowena, dead Ligea fights with Vincent Price. Dead Ligea gets thrown into the fire pit, but I don't remember. Go ahead.
Which is, a thing you keep around in your Egyptian room.
Yes.
It's not even like truly Egyptian room. It's like a mix of a lot of different things because there's like a canopy bed with super gothy. It's like the gothiest Egyptian room.
Yeah. I said it looked a lot like a very goth Pier 1 Imports. Like there's like all this
stuff. That's exactly what I was gonna say. That's hilarious. Yeah. It's the gothy. That you hit it right. That's exactly what was forming in my mind. By the way, before we go too much further, post this podcast, you have to figure out where on the scale bag of rocks fits in.
Right.
The box of rocks, bag of hammers, bag of rocks.
Like the dumbest possible.
Box of hammers as well. So there's
bag of rocks is the dumbest possible that it could be.
Anyway, yes, Gothy Pier 1 Imports / World Market.
Yes,
Gothy, actually kind of Gothy World Market now.
Yeah,
but with a fire pit, eternally burning fire pit.
It's kind of delightful. I mean, again, they could roast marshmallows on that thing.
But then you start to throw everything into the fire pit, and that's where it gets truly outrageous. Like once you start throwing a Ligea in, you might as well. You just like everything goes in the fire pit.
Okay, our 18-year-old
does not go. She does not go in the fire pit.
But she had this wonderful idea where she was like, I would like to see this go in another direction, where Ligea inhabiting the cat and occasionally a body sticks around in the castle, and she and Rowena become friends. And like get into shenanigans while Rowena, the second wife, is married to Vincent Price. But it would be more about a growing friendship, begrudging though it starts out to be, between Ligea and Rowena. And I was thinking, okay, if occasionally she turned into like the cat lady from Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, so she's like, standing around in a cat suit and they're talking. I was like, that actually sounds great. I would
Sophia saw it more as Dennis the ghost on Buffy on Angel, that Cordelia has as the roommate. So she's Ghost Dennis. Oh, Ghost Dennis. So I'd just be like this. Oh, Ligea, you're so silly. Give me back my hairbrush.
So this is basically Tomb of Ligeia turned into a Josh Whedon television show.
Exactly.
Or have you seen this season of What We Do in the Shadows?
No, I've not.
That is true.
This season is awesome, by the way. But there's a thing, and that reminds me of that. So you should definitely.
Is Matt Berry in What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah,
he is, right? Yeah. See, I haven't watched that series.
Jason!
Shit. Oh my God, you would love it.
You both of you, and whichever kids will watch it as well. Really, this season's been truly amazing. You will flip out. I was reticent. I know we're going off, but I was reticent because the movie was really good. But the show, when it picks up, is freaking amazing, and the things they've done with the vampire characters are really, really good.
Well, that sounds great.
That's one of your endorsements, is it?
I would have been because I, like you, loved the movie, and I just didn't know how they were going to stretch it, the idea of it into a series, and it complements the movie very well. It is so good. Jason, you really need to watch it.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate that.
Okay, but Rain and I mean, it's the highlight. It's one of the highlights of our week, definitely in lockdown. Is look, the new episodes are out. It's so good. Yeah.
I'm definitely a huge fan of Matt Berry. In fact, I think one of my endorsements is going to be a Matt Berry thing that I discovered the other day that I didn't even know existed.
Julie, I think you'll really enjoy it as well. It's quite the crowd pleaser.
So after a very fiery bunch of fighting, sometimes with, illusions, like, for a moment, it really does appear this isn't an illusion that, but there's or I guess I don't know how to explain it. Vincent Price believes that he has strangled Ligea, who's risen again, but in fact, it is Rowena that he appears to have strangled.
Which is luckily, not Price.
Yes.
That's the other thing. In retrospect, how do you go from the first time we met, he tried to choke the life out of me.
Yeah.
to, hey, let's frolic on the beach?
Right.
Is it like the weird, crazy crap in Carousel where she's like, have you ever been hit so hard that it doesn't hurt? Which is, no, Carousel, no, get out of that. That's
Right.
terrible. That movie has, oh man, so many problems. But like, how do you go from, yeah, I mean, he did try to choke me. He thought I was his dead wife, contemplated murder. But the beach thing was pretty cool.
Yes.
He is really interesting. I mean, look at all the Egyptian sculpture he did. That's enough to not make it weird that he tried to choke the life out of me.
The first
That's
time he
fine.
saw me.
Yeah.
Well, admittedly, he thought that I was someone else. The funny thing is that is not an argument that works.
No, you say that, but I actually heard a story the other day. It was part of the Power of Habit. I was reading the Power of Habit book, and they talked about how this guy killed his wife in his sleep because he was he had the sleepwalking, whatever the extreme version of the sleepwalking is, sleep terrors, I guess, whatever, I don't know. But anyway, he killed his wife in his sleep, and he got off, and I'm like kind of like, I don't know. I was really questioning it, but he got off because he had so many episodes of doing crazy stuff in his sleep his whole life. So I don't know.
Who was his doctor? Loomis? Like, jeez, man. I mean, that's terrible. That's terrible if it's true, but
yeah.
Wow. I mean, the proof you would have to have. Oh, that's a horrible story, and just tragic.
Sorry to bum you out, dude.
Tragic on so many levels.
But this movie gives us, strangely, a possibly happy ending, because it appears that Rowena and Christopher, her rather more boring ex-boyfriend-ish friend, pal, Ducky, they ride away together, and she wakes up. She wasn't actually dead, thank goodness, and they're gonna get away. Although she looks a little worse for the wear, and as far as I'm concerned, she could still be Ligea.
Yeah, but the thing is that Ligea is also with Vincent Price, so I was really confused by that the ending was confusing to me. I did not understand exactly what happened with all that. It was very weird, because why is Ligea's body out of the fire pit anyway? And it was very weird, and she blinds him.
Well, there's also the little kind of coda speech kind of thing where definitely, if there was a sequel, she could still be Ligea.
Oh yeah.
Although he is a little bit creepy too, because you can tell throughout the whole thing, he's like, man, I can't believe she digs Vincent Price more than me. Yeah, I do all the rich things. Like, I hunt foxes for real, not just some dead wise fox. Like, his approach, there's concern, but there's also a whole undercurrent of like, gothy jerk.
Entitlement.
Yeah,
well, he's just sticking around. Honestly, truly, he is sticking around until Vincent Price tosses her over, or she is otherwise somehow available again. It's literally like, you know how some people will have a cat that is outdoors often, but anytime you open the door, the cat's just like sprung. He is that way. He's literally like outside the door of the castle all the time. Oh, hey, Christopher's here.
Although
at least once he's tried on some shades. I bet I could be cool. Like, I get some shades like that. Where do you get
fairness, I bet. Sure, he rescued her and everything, but I bet you anything, next month or so later, assuming she isn't possessed by Ligea, he's like hanging out with her, and she still isn't into him.
It's very possible. It's also,
no, that's when he tries the thing. Hey, so like, what do you think of these shades on me?
What if I wore
it's just like, oh,
this Regency outfit and the shades, and also, did Vincent Price and Rowena ever? Are we given to understand that they have not consummated this marriage? Because
I think they were frolicking on the beach. I think
they're frolicking on the beach. Yeah. So
she has a pretty good.
Theory,
she's having a lot of fun for that not to be part of that.
No, you're right.
Everybody's got. Look, I don't want to judge their relationship, but I think things are great relationship-wise for that little time period where they're not at the house.
Yeah, before they get back to the house. Yeah, you're right.
Because there's that whole business of him immediately flipping the shades back on, and it's like he changes. So,
yeah, right.
Like, I think I think Tony's right. I think they at least consummated the marriage, but once they're back in the house, there's no more,
Yeah,
you know,
and she casts a pall. Ligea casts a pall over that entire place. It is shocking. You feel it, even though this is an old film. It has its own dramatic flair, but you feel the sudden dread when Corman sort of sweeps the camera into the room when they moved into the castle, and you find that he's putting on those shades, and you're like, oh shit, like suddenly he's back to being something that you didn't want him to be.
I mean, in a different movie,
cool.
It'd be pretty much like Psycho. Norman,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're back from the beach.
Right?
With your wife.
She's a dirty girl. Yeah.
In this one, it's
man.
dead wife, demon woman who won't even give him the satisfaction of giving a death certificate because she's just won't even do it.
Fascinating. The funny thing is, you think about other kinds of bad guy Batman plots this could have been. If Ligea had played it right, she could have had a new body and could have just kept ruling this place for years to come. She didn't really need to get the death certificate. But, if Ligea has been adamant not to have a death certificate, then that means that Ligea intends to come back like body and soul. And just like go,
and because
you guys were all wrong.
She never gave any of the. She never put his name on anything. So she owns the house. He can't sell the house, the castle, because it's in her name. So she's like, just in case you just get this in your head that you're gonna not be thinking that you're married to me anymore, you can't have the house.
By the way, I would want somebody who's not me. I mean, because I don't know jack about this, but is that how inheritance worked because I apologize for what I'm going to say. Downton Abbey made a big deal out of how the daughters could not pass houses, basically. That essentially, the house went from husband to husband. And that was Mary's whole problem, is that she needed to figure out a way to hold on to that house. So I would love to understand, like, whether the business that Christopher, who's a lawyer, is talking about here has any bearing in reality or not.
It's who knows? Because it depends on. I mean, it's England, first of all, so we don't know anything about England law, and second. Right. I mean, Downton Abbey takes place in a different time period. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, but a later time period where they still also have a problem.
If she's an eternal demon, she may have had the wherewithal and the funds to. If you're rich enough, you do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. She doesn't have a birth date, so she may have been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
For all we know.
So if we're led to believe that, then she could be rich and do whatever she wanted. By the way, how many times do you think Christopher also used the line like, "Well, Lisa, I own my own house. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't have a woman who owns my, like, look at that. I mean, that dead wife owns the house. I mean, that's unfortunate and all, but I'm just saying that I own mine."
The Elizabeth Sheppard who plays the characters, the reason I didn't recognize her is her face. Considering it's the same actress, her face looks super different, and it has to do with, I guess, the effect is because Ligea has her face framed wholly by that black hair with bangs, and then Rowena always has her hair completely pulled back and it's reddish blonde. And they just look like different people. I mean, it's an amazing effect. I was completely, in Oslo, you don't see Ligea a lot, but I was pretty amazed. That was amazing too.
Yeah, makeup and set designers were. They
did good here.
Everything right.
Well, hats off to the actress too.
Yes, indeed. No,
well, I started out by saying that. Yeah, I was impressed by her. She was amazing.
So very cool. Well, is there anything else that I guess we should get our final thoughts, and if there's anything that we've forgotten, you can throw it in. Did we start with Tony? I think we started with
Drew.
Tony.
I think we started with Drew.
Did we? Oh, yes, we did. It was Drew, Julia, Tony.
Am I just making that up?
No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're right. So, Mr. Drew, final thoughts, Tomb of Ligeia.
Well, so not to bring the mood down, I almost didn't do the show this week. I thought about backing it out because today is actually the 21st anniversary of the death of my twin. And so I had a couple of days of panic about like, oh, should I do the show or not? I didn't want to throw off the schedule that we had made though. So and then I really thought about it, and these Vincent Price Poe movies were some things that we really watched a lot when I was a teenager. And, those are some of my last really good, normal memories of my twin. And so I just wanted to say that I think this was a very appropriate thing for me to, both watch this movie and then lean into, this discussion tonight. And it just made me feel good to do that. And it was cathartic. And I am glad that I kept with the decision to go ahead and do the episode, because I feel good now having done this, and it was a good discussion. And getting back onto the actual topic of the movie, this is a wonderful film. Like, if you have never seen it, I think we've said this throughout this entire retrospective, a lot of people think, oh, Roger Corman, Vincent Price, it's going to be cheesy. All of these movies that we've discussed are beautiful, they're well acted, they have a lot of cool things going on with them, and this is no exception. This is a wonderful, wonderful film. And I enjoyed discussing it and analyzing it and talking about it with three of my favorite people.
Oh, that's so kind, and we're very glad that you did. Joy, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I don't know if the appropriate thing at this point is to say I'm sorry, but I'm glad that you're here, and I would have said, like, thinking of you, but you're right here, so I actually have no idea what the proper thing is to say. But
yeah, it is okay.
How about my heart goes out to you? I'll say that. Yeah, that's I think that's a great way to remember your twin for sure. I think I've already said my piece about this film. It's, like I say, beautiful to look at, interesting story. I want to go back and read now the original Poe story. Our dog is called Poe, by the way, named after Edgar Allan Poe, just FYI to the audience. The other one is Shelley, for just
that's true.
Mary or Percy or whoever you want, but Mary because she's a female. Anyway, and so I think it's been a neat series, and I love Vincent Price, and I've enjoyed watching these films. I think it's neat. I'm glad we did it.
Wonderful, thank you. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. In fact, in some ways, I think I enjoyed the discussion of the movie slightly more than the movie, which is strange because I really enjoy it. But also, Drew, we're honored that you took the time to spend with us. I know this can't be easy, but it really does. There's a lot to our friendship, and I appreciate that you still want to spend the time with us. And I know it can't be easy, but thanks a lot for that. It is really enjoyable to hang out when things are just, everything is what it is. It's something. I still, I don't know, I have a hard time processing a lot of things and in useful and constructive ways. So I'm glad that we can be a part of that and hanging out. But yeah, I really dig this movie a lot. It's one thing about this whole retrospective is seeing just what a joy Vincent Price is, and how his breadth and depth of acting, even though a lot of people may write him off as kind of, oh, look, it's a Vincent Price, it's very much a character actor. But when you look at the whole retrospective, and you look at all of these movies that he did with Corman, especially, and I hope people have a more of a respect for Corman as well, because there's a lot of B-movie stuff, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's a lot of great cinematic moments that if you write it off as not as good as, whatever elevated horror that's now, you're doing it a disservice. I think you can enjoy the bits, even if sometimes there may be some cheesy stuff here and there. I think too many people write off B movies as, oh, that's so schlocky, I can't possibly be serious and learn anything. But as Drew pointed out, and as we've seen, a lot of filmmakers who people see as maybe more respectable, and I'll add that in probably quotes, have used these movies as touchstones to make bigger budget and more award-winning movies. So there's something, again, to the whole, don't just look at the things you like and copy or be narrow-minded about that, because somebody else is taking all of those colors from their palette and adding it to their art. To the point where Drew was right. Hey, look, where'd that costuming for Gary Oldman come from? Oh snap! Look, this quote unquote B movie that you may or may not have seen. Somebody thought that was worth putting in a bigger budget movie, in a more respectable setting or whatever. So you can learn everybody can learn something from even the outside the norm kind of stuff, or outside your comfort zone. And I hope that everybody, we do that all the time. I'm constantly amazed. I watch a ton of schlock as well as, the latest stuff. So I'm hoping that people take the time out to really, dig around for that stuff. It helps.
Wonderful. I that was so incredibly well said that I almost it's almost difficult for me to follow that. But
thanks. I don't know about that, but thank you.
First of all, yes, Drew, we're so thankful that you would spend time, and it's an honor.
Thank you.
It's funny, this movie, I said that I didn't watch it till I was an adult, but actually I do remember coming across it briefly when I was a kid. I remember being at my grandparents' house and just coming across it in the middle of the night, and it was definitely the scene when Verdun Fell is wandering around during the burial, like at the beginning. And I didn't stick around for it because it didn't, I don't know, who knows why. It didn't appeal to me at the time, whatever. But that image of Vincent Price in the sunglasses outdoors, stayed with me forever. I think he's given this name, Verdun Fell, I think in reference to the old poem, I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. But really, I have no idea. But it seems impossible to think of that name, Fell, and not think of I do not like thee, Dr. Fell, the reasons why I cannot tell. It's beautiful. So it's really a great piece of work. It's I again, given all of the forces that were working on films at the time, and on Roger Corman and on American International, the fact that for whatever reason they created this very beautiful cycle of films is shocking, and it's just glorious that we have them. So I'm very, very thankful, and I'm really glad that we got a chance to talk about them. So awesome. Let's do endorsements. And also, I should just announce we are going to be updating the schedule of upcoming movies because I know that we're off one in the Hangout episodes. So we'll update all that stuff. But let's get endorsements. Mr. Drew, what do you have to share with us?
Well, you brought up my membership in the PEN America Fellowship today with a new intro, and I would like to suggest people go to their website, pen.org. PEN America is it is a fellowship of writers. They've come together. It's sort of, not only for writers to share ideas, and this is all kinds of writers, from like poets to journalists, fiction writers. I'm a comic book writer, but also it's ways we can use writing to help human rights. We can protect free expression. One of the things that they've been doing recently that I have personally benefited from is they have a grant that they are giving out to writers in need that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. They are also there's also a writing program that they have gotten started in prisons to help prisoners cope with being in prison through the art of writing. They are always looking through donors. So what I am suggesting for you to do is to go to pen.org, learn more about them, and maybe consider becoming a donor, donating some money to this very, very worthy organization that I'm very proud to be a part of now. I'm going to sandwich my less high-minded endorsement with something I read today and finish on something self-serving. But The other thing that I enjoyed today is I read Absolute Carnage, written by Donny Cates and drawn by Chris Stegman. It's a Spider-Man crossover from earlier this year, and it's very pulpy. It's very much rooted in a lot of continuity from 1990s Spider-Man comics. So you're gonna either be on board with that or not. The one thing I would say this comic really smartly does is that it knows the character of Carnage is kind of a silly villain inherently, and it sort of rolls with that. It's very over the top in that. And if you that sounds like your idea of a good time, it only took me about like an hour to read it all, and it's available on Comixology right now for only $3.99. So pretty cheap for a whole Marvel crossover. Finally, the Ringo Awards, the nomination process is closing on June 25th, so there's only a few weeks left. I've been periodically bringing this up on the podcast. I am trying to get in as best writer, and I'm trying to get Halloween Man in as best hero. So please go to ringoawards.com, nominate me, nominate Halloween Man, and hey, nominate some of your other favorite comic book creators if you're a comic book fan, because Lord knows there's plenty of people that need support. So I would really appreciate your time on that as well. Anyway, thanks y'all.
Fantastic. Wow, that was good. Okay, Julia, do you have anything to endorse?
I do this time. I just watched a film that you may have heard of called Just Mercy with Michael B. Jordan. And it is, oh God, it just had me, I don't know if this is an endorsement because you might not want to feel this way, but it just had me just sobbing. I mean, I was just like sobbing. It's based on the true story. It's based on a book written by the actual lawyer in the book, in the movie. And I'm looking up his name real quick before I say it wrong. Let me see here. But anyway, it's a really moving film about this attorney who represents death row inmates. He's a Harvard graduate, law school graduate, and he chose to work for a nonprofit that represents, or actually started it. His name was, let me see here. Brian Stevenson, that's it. Michael B. Jordan plays Brian Stevenson, and he wrote a book about his experiences representing death row inmates, especially one in particular named Walter McMillan, and they call him Johnny D just colloquially. But he was an innocent. He was arrested for a murder that he obviously didn't commit when anybody looks at any of the evidence, but the crooked cops had basically told someone that they needed to say he did it, whatever. It's a long story, but anyway, so he's the main one, but there's several other people that are represented as well by this lawyer, and it just paints this picture of how there are two different justice systems in America for white people versus black people, and how, even the lawyer who is black is completely abused and mistreated. It gets, pulled over for no reason and like manhandled, gets strip searched at the prison. All these things happening to the lawyer because he's black, let alone these inmates and how they're treated. So it's really moving. It was very, even though we all hear so many stories of all these awful things that happen, it's still shocking to see just the wide scale of it all. So I definitely recommend it as a film by itself, not even considering what's going on right now, but especially considering what's going on right now. It's a great watch.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much. Tony, what about you?
I guess I gotta endorse What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
But between that and I kind of went off on a long stream of cool stuff last time, so on Thursday, so I don't have a lot more since then. I've been enjoying if you want old school nostalgia video games, I've been enjoying the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, which is a bunch of stuff that was on TurboGrafx, which was a machine I didn't own. Friends of mine had it, and they made a mini version of it. I like it because I can even power it off the USB power off of my TV, which is great. But it also has a bunch of Japanese games I never got to play, which sucks because I can't read very much Japanese. But there's a lot of cool voice acting and stuff like that in that section. And I've been watching it off and on because Rain's been watching it, but I've been in and out doing stuff. Self-Made on Netflix, which is inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. That's the title. It's pretty great. Octavia Spencer, Tiffany Haddish, huge, awesome cast. Really interesting period piece. Everything I've caught has been amazing so far. Really great performances and interesting soundtrack, etc. So, and that's on Netflix. I can't, I've been watching off and on, so I can't say, oh yeah, through and through, it's the best thing. But everything I've caught so far has been pretty awesome. So I'm going to go with that as well, even if it's a little tangential.
No, I think it's fabulous. You said Self-Made, The Life of C.J. Walker?
Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. And the cast, huge swaths of the best in kind of African-American actors and actresses. The period piece, it brings up a lot of stuff and has a contemporary soundtrack for huge sections of it. I everything I've seen so far has been really great. Touches on the politics of the time and what's changed, what's haven't, brings up the relevance, modern relevance, as well as, here's how things were in this time period. Here's also, hey, how much has changed, how much hasn't. It's really, I've been enjoying it. So
fantastic. I do not have anything to endorse other than I want to wish our younger daughter happy birthday, which just happened this past week.
Yeah.
And
the older daughter is having her graduation this coming week.
This coming week. So it's a big week. Been super busy. Also, okay, last thing I did put up. I had a really neat event launching my book, The Bookman, this week, and I put up a 4-minute video called "The World of the Bookman," which is just about all the influences that I used for the book, and just trying to explain in 4 minutes everything going on in pop culture in Southern California in 1958. And so check it out if you haven't already, because I think it's kind of fun. So that's
Rain's been reading that, by the way.
Oh, has she?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
She got it on a Kindle, and that's been her, for bed reading. So
I can't wait to hear what she thinks. Honestly, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear where she comes down, and I hope she'll share, because I'm dying to know. All right, so cool. Thank you, everybody, and Drew. Congratulations once again on the PEN America Fellowship, and everybody. We will see you next week. I can't remember what movie is next week, but it promises to be cool. Regardless. And this Thursday, we're recording a Hangout episode on Demon of Paradise, which is a cheesy monsters on the beach film. So, from the sublime to the ridiculous. I cannot wait. Everybody, be excellent to one another, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.